Welcome to the I'm Book podcast. I'm April O'Leary, and this is the YouTube version of our podcast. To get the audio version, you can hop on over to Spotify or anywhere that you consume audio podcasts. We are going to jump into some really cool content, so stay tuned for our next guest. We look forward to connecting with you, and be sure to subscribe. And to start your author adventure, hop on over to o'learypublishing.com, where you can map out the entire process and see what writing a book would look like for you. Let's get started. Welcome back to the I'm Booked podcast. I'm April O'Leary, and I am so thrilled today to have Anna David on. As you heard, she's amazing, has a ton of books, and right before I hit the record button, we were sharing so much similarity from our path into sobriety, to writing, to publishing, and so I'm certain that you are going to absolutely love this interview. Welcome, Anna. Glad to have you.
I love it, April. I'm so happy to be here.
So as I was reading Anna's bio and checking out all of her books, I noticed a lot of them had to do with sobriety. And of course, if you've been around here anytime, you know, last year we published a book called Sober Moms, Happy Moms. And I said, I see some books on sobriety that you've written. Is that because you're also in sobriety?
And the crazy thing is, I reached out to you having no idea that you were in sobriety. I just saw what you were doing with books. And then when I was looking into it and I saw the Sober Moms, Happy Moms, I thought, I didn't think, April must be sober. I was just like, she publishes books about recovery. How great. So funny.
So there's a saying in the recovery world that we both are in, that is it odd or is it God? And so, I don't believe that there are coincidences. I think there's a reason we're here on this podcast. And I think there's a reason that you, my friend, are listening to this podcast right now. So if you don't mind, let's talk a tiny bit about sobriety. I heard from Anna just before, she's been sober 22 years, which, looking at her, you would think she got sober when she was 5 years old. So there's no possible way that she got sober in 2000. But tell me a little bit about that moment of clarity for you and how you chose sobriety.
Well, okay, so it will be 22 in November. Who knows when you all are going to hear this? But, it's funny because people in recovery are very paranoid about saying like 22 or whatever the year before the actual date, God willing. I really am confident I will stay sober 22 years so that this will still be true. But my sober date is November 19th of 2000. I was 30 years old. I was just a lost kid. I was a very young 30. I had trauma. I didn't know it. I had depression. I knew that. I was also really fun. So it's not like it was all tragic, but it got increasingly tragic in my late 20s. And it got to the point where I was just like in my apartment doing cocaine alone, 2 cats, chugging vodka, smoking cigarettes, wanting to die. And I knew about AA and I knew about recovery and I knew about rehab and I wanted nothing to do with it, even though everything I knew about it was good. But this was also the late 90s. So there was no sober influencer. There was no Sober Moms, Happy Moms books. There was none of this. There was, if you Googled, it was, this is where Charlie Sheen went to rehab. There was nothing else. And so I poked around and I tried things and I hated them. And then one morning that was no different than any other morning. I have no idea why. I woke up, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And my big moment is I called my mom and I told her the truth. And the following Monday, I was in outpatient rehab. That was May. I was one of these people who didn't quite believe that alcoholism and addiction were the same thing. I got that they were for you, but for me, I was like, no, I can drink. It's different for me. And not getting that, I just didn't want to give it up. And then I tried November 18th of 2000. Ended up taking 4.5 hits of ecstasy after that glass of wine and came back the next day with the understanding that for me, alcoholism and addiction are synonymous. It's all the same thing. And it's really not about how much you drink or how many drugs you do. It's like this feeling, I'm not much, but I'm all I think about. I'll do anything to escape that.
Oh my God. You're speaking the truth, sister. Can I
get
So, it's funny because you're right. I just posted on the Sober Moms Happy Moms this morning a quote from the Big Book, which I love, which is, when we enjoy it, we don't control it. And when we control it, we don't enjoy it. And for me, when I came in March of 2016, which is 6 years ago, I was like, am I in the right place? I never got a DUI. I don't have any sort of like police record. I had 3 kids. Like, from the outside, everything looked
And
fine.
look at you. I mean, you are the very picture of innocence. Let's be honest.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Don't look in the closet with all the skeleton bones falling out. But yeah, and I remember hearing that very early on. And I thought, oh my God, I thought everybody kind of drank like that. Like, I was so surprised. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening to this, that people weren't blacking out every time they were drinking. I was like, I never was embarrassed about what I did, really, because I figured, well, I didn't remember the night, so nobody else remembered it clearly.
Totally.
And then once I got sober and I realized, like, no, pretty much everybody else did see what was going on and realize what was going on. I was like, wow, it was like my brain could not process that. And I've since learned, and I tell my girls this, I was like, alcoholism is an allergy of how your body processes alcohol. So if these certain things happen, like you're drinking and you black out, like, that's probably because it's not metabolizing it right. Like, I try to destigmatize it because I don't feel shame that like someone who's a peanut allergy should be ashamed that they can't eat peanuts. It's like, no, heavens, please don't eat peanuts. You're going to die.
Right. It's it also blew my mind when I got sober. My very first job, I was working at a magazine called Premiere, which is now long gone. And I got this column called Party Girl. And my job was to go to premieres, go to the Oscars, go to the Emmys, and interview celebrities and live this like party girl life. And I thought, I can't do this. I was fresh out of rehab. And then I go, and it was just blowing my mind. I mean, free alcohol. And I'm like, wait a minute, not everybody goes to a party, rushes to the bar, does shots, and looks for the Coke dealer. Like, that blew my mind. People just walk into parties. That's crazy to me. It's not anymore. But
Yeah.
but that really made it easy. And so I thought, I can't be around all these open bars, and this is gonna be so hard. And then I'd see like the glass of wine go by on the tray, and I'd go, I want that. And then I'm like, no, I don't. I want that, followed by a bottle, followed by, then I'll call my dealer, then I'll want to die. So I really learned how to think it through.
Yeah. That's the key, thinking it through and knowing that if I've done it once, I've done it 100 times, and I'll do it 100 more times. And how many more times do I need to prove to myself that I don't like to drink like a normal person? And for people that drink normally, what we're saying would sound absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And that's what I had to understand too. Like, I'm like, wait a second. I remember actually I've been in this house now for 8 years. And when I was newer in my neighborhood, I was like thinking, because my husband got sober 8 years before me. We got sober at the same chronological age. But so for 8 years, I was like, who am I going to drink with? Where can I find my, so I remember walking across the street to a neighbor's house one Saturday afternoon with a bottle of wine, thinking like, we're going to hang out and drink. And like, I had a couple glasses and I was ready to go for my third glass, and she was still like barely drinking her first. And I was like itching to like, are we going to have, keep going? And it was like disappointing, but also eye-opening. I was like, okay, this is not a good drinking partner. And how is this person on Saturday afternoon not just like wanting to have more? Like, and now I understand, like, okay, that's not how most people live their world.
Yeah.
But so I'm glad to meet another sober sister. And I know we could go down the sober rabbit hole for probably an hour, but that would be for another podcast, another time. But I will say, for any of you who are questioning your drinking, or maybe you're already in sobriety, Google Anna David. She has a ton of sobriety books. I've recently heard Quit Lit. I
know. Well, allegedly, my book was the first one. That's what I've heard. But
I'm talking to the Quit Lit girl. I didn't know that.
No, but what it means is that I was just 10 years before it became big. So, I wrote Party Girl when I first, I was 3 years sober, and I thought, recovery is nothing like I expected it to be. And I mean, I think this is what it has to do with books and writing, is like, I thought if I could change one person's life so that they could see that you don't have to want to kill yourself before getting sober, if you could see what the other side is like and how much fun it's, how much hilarity and how alive it is, then I'll have done something good. And that's when I had this interesting story, which was that I had gotten my first job in recovery was writing a book called Party Girls. So I kind of thought, well, what if I took that idea and I fictionalized it? And instead of it being a book about a column about celebrities and Oscars and all that stuff, it's a column about like living a wild and crazy life. And it's a girl who gets sober and has to portray this life that she doesn't lead anymore. And so that was the concept for the book. And all these years later, so I got HarperCollins published it, came out in 2007. And then when I started my company 5 years ago, I worked on getting the rights back. I was able to republish it last year under my own imprint. And right now the movie has been in development this entire time, and it looks like it's actually going to get made now. So that's great. Yeah.
Congratulations. I'll be the first in line to see it. I'm so excited for you. That's amazing. And what an inspirational story for us women in sobriety to know that life doesn't turn into like, I'm going to have to just be boring and have nothing to do and no friends and no fun. Because I know when I was out there drinking, I kind of thought that was the only fun that I had.
Totally.
The only way I knew to have fun. And I can remember, I mean, this is like really a stupid admission, but when my kids were little, they were in a private school, and a lot of the parents who also drank, they would have these children's birthday parties at very nice resorts and whatnot. And it was always like alcohol for the parents. But occasionally there would be a party that was actually kid appropriate and there was no alcohol. And you're like, well, that sucks. Why would I want to go to that party? Right. Well, because maybe we're celebrating a 3-year-old's birthday and we don't need to be like binging at their party. Like that was, so to now be able to go and enjoy life on life's terms and show up for someone else because it's the right thing to do. And you can celebrate their life and their experiences and their, I don't know, weddings, baby showers, whatnot, without being the drunk person.
Right.
So good. So congratulations on that. And now let's talk a little bit about traditional publishing and independent publishing, because the mystery of publishing, and I was mentioning to you right before this that I had a meeting with a gal who's a podcast producer, and she doesn't really know much about the publishing industry. And I was explaining to her that back when I published my first book, and I self-published, I'm saying in quotes, in 2012, because at that time I didn't understand anything about publishing. And I went to a large publishing, traditional publisher workshop thinking that I was going to like hand this manuscript off and I was going to be the next best thing. And, I was very grandiose and not sober at the time. So the two go hand in hand. And I learned that it wasn't going to happen because I didn't have the platform yet. And so I self-published, but I didn't know about the independent publishing world and what that had to offer. And I don't think it was as robust as it is now. As we were saying, there's a lot of people who serve this niche of authors who want their books to get out there in a very professional, with a, professional look and feel and experience, but they want to own the rights to their book. They want to do a lot of other things with it. So what was your experience with HarperCollins? And you don't have to give any names or anything. And what was it like to be able to try to get that book back?
Well, I love to give names because I'm so bitter. I'm not really bitter anymore. But back, okay, so back when I got in it, there was no Instagram. Facebook, when I sold Party Girl, Facebook didn't exist. It did exist by the time it came out. So there was no such thing really as a platform. What there was what I had been writing for magazines, and I had a name as a magazine columnist. And so I was very lucky in that, like, I had agents coming to me and saying, hey, if you ever want to write a book, I like your voice a lot. And so Party Girl, it was like this total Cinderella story. This amazing agent came to me, sold it within a week to my top choice publisher. And I was like, I think all writers, when you're working on a book, you vacillate. Oh, your guest, I was just listening to this morning. He said it, and it's so true. I can't remember his name now, but it's basically like you vacillate between like, I'm a genius writing something the world has been waiting for, and like, oh, I suck, I'm horrible. But so I feel like also when the universe gives us all lucky breaks. And if you're like me and you're a slow learner, you don't get that it's a lucky break. You think, well, of course, I'm selling this to my top choice publisher. This is what was always destined to happen to me. Not getting that like the universe was giving me a bone. What happened is that top choice publisher, Judith Regan, was fired in like the biggest scandal to ever hit publishing. A few months before my book came out, the entire division dissolved and all these plans just dissipated. I was already very embedded in the media and I was already on the Today Show and I was already doing all of these things. So it got a lot of media attention and a lot of Hollywood rights attention, but didn't sell. And I am a slow learner. So then HarperCollins gave me 5 more book deals. And every year I'd be like, okay, I get a new book deal and I'm like, I'm going to do this. It's going to, and they don't tell you anything. And specifically what they don't tell you is that, and there was this recent, there's this been in the news, these 2 publishers merging. And there's been a lot of this big trial where all these things about publishing are coming out that are shocking the world and that are like, duh, of course, to me. They're like going in case, like, they're like, wait, you're giving these book deals and you don't do any research, so you don't know what books are going to sell. And they're like, no. So, but the way traditional publishing works is they know they're going to have like a Glennon Doyle and they're going to make so much money off of one big book every season that they're basically giving deals to people knowing that they're probably not going to earn out and that they're not going to put any marketing behind them. But I didn't know that. They don't tell you, oh, you know what? You're one of those authors that we're actually not putting anything behind, because nobody wants to hear that. And so it was an incredibly frustrating experience. By my 6th book, and that one was a New York Times bestseller. That was with Simon and Schuster. I was like, oh, I hate writing. This is awful, because it's demoralizing to feel like you're losing every time. Because I'm sorry, this is such a long answer, but all traditional publishing ever does is like, it makes you feel like you're not doing enough. Like, okay, your book didn't sell, you didn't have the crazy launch. And so for me, because I have that New York Times bestselling book, a lot of people have always come to me and asked me to write their books. I don't want to write anybody's book. One person was so insistent that I ended up hiring someone else. I said, I'll hire this girl. She's looking for writing work. And then I edited it. Then we published it. Then I saw him it was a recovery memoir, get spokesperson deals, get speaking gigs, get all over the media. And I thought, oh my God, I did 6 books and didn't understand that a book is about building a business. He did 1 and he got it. And now we've done it. I actually don't know. I think we published about 40 books now, because that was 5 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny because in publishing, right, it's like you don't necessarily get to peek behind the curtain and know all the secrets of what's going on. And so a lot of it's left to being a mystery or guessing game. And like when I paid money and drove, hours away to go to this writer's workshop by this big publishing house that I thought was in alignment with the content, at least I did a little research. I knew that this publisher published in the genre that I had written. So it wasn't like I was going way outside. But when I learned about how traditional publishing deals happened, because at that point, yes, Facebook was already out and Instagram was already out. And I was like, wait a second, but I want to publish this book because I want to help people and I want to use it to help grow my business.
Yeah.
Then it became like well, then how do I just do it? How do I get it done? And yeah, I mean, that first book, I can't say, sit here and say we ever received any awards or sold, that I even recouped my money from doing it. I don't know, but I did open a lot of doors of opportunity with that book.
Yeah.
So with your Party Girl book, now that you have your own publishing business, Legacy Launchpad, how did you go about getting those rights back? Because you said that was published in 2007. So I would think that by now they would be like, oh, that book's old, go ahead and take it. But
one would think. And in a way, the reason it was so hard is that they cared so little. It was like the division, Regan Books, had dissolved. It had been, and so my agent had to go to so many people, and it was sort of like and it was the pandemic, that they could barely be bothered to respond. At a certain point, so my lawyer got involved, my agent got involved. At a certain point, I just went, you know what? I'm just going to republish this. If they come after me, they come after me. And then I got the letter saying, congratulations, your rights have reverted back to you. So it's not that it's so hard, it's that they care so little.
Hmm. And that's kind of sad and disheartening, because in the independent publishing world, and I'm sure probably you're the same way with your authors, like we do whatever we can to help our authors position themselves to succeed, and not that we can magically get them on the Today Show or get them any media spots or help them quickly build their platform to 1 million followers. But I think that by structuring the business side, like you said, understanding that you're really building a book business, a business is built on a book and that has other arms to it. And how can you leverage that and build a brand? I think is really where my heart is for my authors, is that we want them to feel like the book is opening doors for them, and not that they're emailing us and we could care less and we're never going to respond. And,
I mean, here's the thing. If you are publishing traditionally, you are at odds with your publisher. Your publisher is interested in having people buy HarperCollins books, not in buying your books. So even the fact that you can't put like a lead magnet or a QR code in your book, the truth of the matter is, if someone's paying, and I think our businesses are the same, someone comes in and pays and we're the experts and we do it for them, but they're paying, we are so invested in that payment paying off for them. We won't take clients that we don't think they can earn back 10 times their investment. And it's never going to be in book sales. I don't check my book sales. I tell, don't check them. It's just depressing. I would so much rather have 100 people who are going to hire me or follow me or become a fan than 10,000 people who don't really care reading my book.
Agreed. It's something interesting, and maybe you've heard this. I don't know. I heard this recently from someone I know through LinkedIn. And they kind of, like you said, you got this deal in such a short amount of time with your dream publisher. And I think that most of us are led to believe that traditional publishing is mostly out of reach for most, I'm saying, quote, normal people. Well, this person had, through a stroke of luck, reached the right person, at the right publishing company at the right time, who was able to pitch their book without a literary agent, and they got a deal. But here was the deal. No money up front. So there wasn't any sort of like, we're so happy to have your idea. No. And they don't really have a platform, but they're paying for their book project. So they're not outfronting any money to get their book done, but they're expected to buy a certain amount of copies on the back end.
Yeah.
So essentially they're kind of losing the rights to their book, and they are paying. Because they're paying for copies of their book, which of course then the publisher is making money, because they have to buy the books at whatever 30% off retail, which is an exorbitant amount to be able to afford for an author. So it's kind of like pay now or pay later.
Totally. I mean, and a lot of those places they've cracked down on, but it's madness too, because it's usually it's about 2 to 3 years if you're going to go traditional. Whereas, we can do it in, once we had to do a book in a month. I'm talking writing and publishing, and we'll never do that again.
You beat me, you win.
We were brand new. It was a guy on the Real Housewives of New Jersey. He's like, I need my book, and I didn't have the reason we can't keep doing that is we've got a whole slate of other clients that we're working with. But usually it's, about 6 months, and that's wonderful, because if the person knows in that 6 months while this book is being written, be out there, be connecting with your audience, get your newsletter list going, make it, post on LinkedIn, make it so that people are so hungry to get this book. It's going to make such a difference.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk a little bit about guaranteeing a book success. And if you can do that, like, how can you guarantee a book success? Or is it not really, if someone's promising you that your book's going to be success, you should watch out, and that's a red flag. What do you feel about that?
I think we get really clear about what the word success means. So for me, success is never book sales, but I look at it like, we have clients who, if they acquire a new customer, that's a like $15,000 to $50,000 value for them. So is success getting 3 clients in a year? Is success getting a speaking gig? So I think it's really big picture stuff. And the way I look at it, I had 6 miserable book launches because those books with Harper's, I just always felt like they were failures, and even the New York Times one. And I always felt like I wasn't doing enough. Now I only have, quote, successful ones because I control it. I decide. It doesn't mean I get everything I want, but I really also, and this has to do with recovery, it's like, oh, well, this is what's meant to be. With Make Your Mess Your Memoir, I have all these contacts in the media, and granted, I'm like, haven't talked to some of them in a while, and I'm like months ahead of time trying to work this and trying to work that, and this old friend, and why aren't they writing me back? And then I land on Good Morning America the week the book is out. So it's like the universe has such bigger plans for us if we get into acceptance. If we stop going, well, this isn't working and this isn't successful, it's like, okay, well, why don't you shut up and see what happens? And what I did with Good Morning America, that's a show I'd always wanted to get on for my traditional books, and I never did. And I was like, okay, there's a global pandemic. My book is about writing. This is not newsworthy. But what is newsworthy? Well, I use writing to heal. So what if, I look up statistics about how depression is at an all-time high with the pandemic, and I write a press release that's all about writing, is one way to deal with the depression that's, brought on by the pandemic. And we got it on freaking Good Morning America. So, and to me, so it's like, if you look at book sales, and book sales are weird because we don't know, you can't go, I got on Good Morning America, that sold this many books, but I can kind of look at Amazon. I think it sold about 5 or 6 books, but it brought in hundreds of thousands of dollars of business because I had the legitimacy of a 4-minute segment on Good Morning America. So I think it's all about how you define success.
I love that. And the bigger picture, like you said, the bigger picture, if someone comes to me, and this has happened so many times, we offer like publishing consultation, or if someone wants an editorial consultation, we're very slow to engage with someone in a full contract because we want to make sure that how they define success is similar to how we would. Right. And if someone says, well, I want to be a New York Times bestseller, and they're unknown, and they, I'm like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Bye. It's redefining. It's probably not going to happen, but if you position the book in a way that will help you get those 2 or 3 new clients, what would that mean for your business or for your income? Then it makes the investment in doing a book worthwhile. And then when you see your royalty statements and you see that you didn't make $10,000 or 20, then you're not disappointed, because you understand the book is really a tool to, like you said, it can be a healing tool. It could be a tool of sharing your experience. It could be a tool, like I got a message the other day about the Sober Moms, Happy Moms book. Someone sent me a private message and said, I just finished reading your book. Thank you so much. I'm 6 days sober.
Oh yeah, I love that.
And I was like, it was worth doing the book. Because the ripple effect by one person getting sober, imagine how much that changes the lives of all the people around them. So to me, for that particular book, that's a success, because for that book, I'm not looking to book speaking engagements, or I'm not a sober consultant, or, you know what I mean? Not selling anything for sobriety. I'm like, go to a 12-step meeting. It's free. Bring your $1, like that's the extent of that. But so defining success is really so important for any new author.
Yeah. So
for you, which is amazing, you were able to do a book in 30 days. Like our first book, that when we launched, the same thing, we had, 1 or 2 books we were working on. And that was when I pivoted from writing my own books and doing my own life coaching to like, maybe the universe is showing me this path because I should be helping other people do that. And we did a couple books in 90 days. That's our record so far. But what was your moment of pivoting into publishing?
It was unlike my moment of sobriety. This one has a very dramatic white light experience, which is, I have a friend named Nicholas Cole. He is a genius. He's got a program called Ship 30 for 30. He writes, he's huge on Twitter. He's all over the place. He's a kid. I think he's 30. We became friends, and I was telling him, we were having a meal, and I was telling him that I had all of these like coaching programs for writers and courses for writers, and that people barely signed up and barely bought them. And that when they did, they would complain about how expensive they were. And at the same time, I had incredibly successful people coming to me and asking me to write their books, but oh, I don't know how to do that. And he like just goes, wait a minute. You're telling me you have broke people with a non-abundant mentality complaining, and then you have wealthy people with an abundant mentality asking you for things, and you are trying to serve the former group. What are you doing? And I just kind of woke me up. At that point, we had done 2 books because people had asked me, and I just said, okay, forget the serving the people, the dreamers who think that they'll be New York Times bestselling authors. I want to serve the people who get that the book is the business tool. They don't care if they write it or someone else writes it. They get that it's theirs. And they get that like, no matter what the price is, if it's going to transform their lives, it's a great deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that a kid spoke into your life and showed you that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because sometimes we're so close to our own work, it's hard to zoom out and see what's actually there in front of us. And I found that to be true, for many years as a life coach. I did everything I knew to do. I wrote the book, I did the courses, I did the conferences, I, showed up in person, I showed up online, and it was like, did the summits with multiple speakers, like we're going to grow the list to 1 million people, and it always felt like an uphill battle. But I also look back and I say, oh, well, I needed to learn all those skills to be able to do what I'm doing now. Like there was a process to building the skills and the time of like incubation where, you can't do something. It's like, if you're not sober, you can't tell someone how to get sober.
Right. Yeah. There's always a purpose. I wasted a lot more time than I wish I had on courses, but then I say, it's not too late. Nobody buys my courses are amazing and nobody buys them. And I think we have an inherent problem, which is that people want to have a book, but sometimes they don't want to do the work to have the book. They just kind of want to snap their fingers. Mm-hmm. And so, but maybe I have this course called Audience Building for Writers. It is like every secret. If people took that course, they could do what our, $100,000 clients do. And maybe it's not too late. Maybe I'll find a way next year to package it in such a way that those people actually buy it. Who knows?
Yeah, it's a mystery. And then on the other hand, like you said, the universe can offer you sometimes those Hail Mary moments, like getting on the Good Morning America, when you've been trying to grind it out for months and months and months. And why is this person not responding? Why is that? And then all of a sudden you get that moment. And so that's what I think is so interesting, even in the book publishing process, is I always say, like, you never know the journey your book is going to take. So when you wrote Party Girl, did you foresee it becoming a movie? Did you see, what kind of things have happened to your books that had someone said to you, okay, on a blank page, write everything you think could possibly happen. What doors could open with this book?
Yeah.
Like, what thing would you have never written down that happened?
Well, I told you I'm like pretty delusional and kind of have this attitude of like, and maybe we all have it in like our 20s and 30s where it's just like, well, of course. So yes, I thought it would be a huge movie that would probably star me, even though I'm not an actress. Do you know what I mean? Like I had the grandiose ideas. But
at least you're honest.
Yeah. I mean, but there have been books. I definitely didn't think when I wrote Make Your Mess Your Memoir that I would end up on Good Morning America. Like I definitely didn't. But I will say what I learned from doing, I did 5 books that if I don't even recommend anyone reading them. If somebody writes me and tells me that they liked my second novel, I think, what's wrong with this person? Oh, that's so sad that they're so like not intelligent. Like that's how little I think of some of my books. If anyone listening takes anything from this besides, if you need to get sober, it's a wonderful life. It's like really think about how will this book move the needle in my business? Because otherwise it's not if you want to help people, that's absolutely wonderful. And like you spoke very articulately about like what it was like to help someone, but there are easier ways to help people. You can go volunteer. Don't just do a book to help people. Or if you are, open your mind to the fact that it could do all sorts of other things for you too. And there's nothing wrong with it. They're not mutually exclusive. You can help people and help yourself.
That's true. And, I will say, success, depending on the stage of life you're in and where your mind is at, maybe where your money's at, being in Naples, Florida, maybe I think this way because we have a lot of retirees, successful people who had great careers, and they've got money and they've got time, and they don't want to spend all day necessarily on the golf course. They're not that interested in pickleball. There's plenty of people who are, not saying it's bad, but we have had plenty of opportunity to help people who are in that position where they've learned a lot of things, and it's the intellectual process of writing and the creativity, and they don't go into it necessarily with success being selling a ton of books or getting any consulting careers, and they don't want a speaking tour, but they enjoy the process. And I think that's a worthy endeavor too for people who are intellectually advanced.
Yeah.
That's another goal, that some people, they just enjoy the process. We have an author now who very much had a successful career as an academic, was published by Stanford Press at some point in his academic career, and now really enjoys working with our editor and working with our designers. And, we love him to pieces. If he's listening to this, who I'm talking about, wink, wink. But, that's not about Good Morning America for him. I don't think you would want to fly to get out there. Maybe you would. But so let's talk, let's wrap it up by talking a little bit about your podcast, because you're so fun to talk to, and I'm sure you've got a lot to share over there. So your podcast is called Entrepreneur Publishing Academy. So when did you start that?
Well, this is, and you're going to come on it. We know this. So, y'all got to go listen until you hear April on it. So, and then stay listening. It's okay. This is kind of hilarious. I started a podcast originally, I think it was 2015. It was a recovery podcast. It was called After Party Pod, was the first name. Okay. And it was the first recovery podcast. So it was huge. Then I said, I'm not interested. I love recovery. I'm tired of talking about it. I've said everything I have to say. I don't have a business around it. So I have transitioned it into a writing podcast. I never changed the RSS feed. So some people have stuck with me. They're like, whatever, I'm into her. I'll listen to her talk about whatever. But for the most part, the podcast is not nearly as successful as it was when it was a recovery podcast. It still does very, very well. It's like whatever in the top, 1%. It's exactly what it sounds like, which is it is for entrepreneurs who want to publish a book. It is about how a book can help build your business. And I have different people. I had Chris Voss, who's wonderful. I had Robert Greene. And then sometimes I do solo episodes like you, where I'll just break down some idea. I'm now doing a thing called How to Fix a Broken Book, where I have someone come on whose launch did not go as expected, and I go walk them through their Amazon page and how I would fix it.
Ooh, that's kind of a vulnerable position to be in, to say like, it's like going through my closet and telling me all my ugly clothes that I need to get rid of.
I know, but then what I say to them is, let's get my audience behind your launch. So that's what you get, by showing your vulnerability, you get people who want to support you, so that when your book is relaunched, they will then go out and support you.
I love it. That is great. It's the thing that I'm finding more and more about authors and about publishers like you and I are, is that we're all just a community of people trying to help each other. Because the more we all succeed, it's like the tide rises all ships. Is that right? I didn't say that right.
A rising tide, I don't know, but something all ships.
Something. It's something to that effect. But that's the thing, is the more we can help one another succeed, the more we all succeed together. And I love that about the independent publishing industry, as opposed to the traditional publishing industry, like you said, which is a little bit us versus them.
Yeah.
It's much we're a collaborative team. We all want to help each other. Not to poo-poo those of you who have gotten traditional deals, or you have that in your mind that is the gold standard. Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Know what you're asking for, work with the right people and manage your expectations accordingly. It works out for a lot of people. There are benefits. As you mentioned, Glennon Doyle, for example, I just saw her book yesterday in Barnes and Noble, her book's in Costco. Like, there are things that traditional publishers can absolutely do that independent publishers might not want to take the risk and do. At least I could speak for myself.
I got a way to get your book in Barnes and Noble. I have an episode about it. And, to be clear, the traditional publishers are getting Glennon Doyle's books there. They're not getting yours. I find it easier to get my own books I publish into stores than when I was traditionally published.
Well, make sure that you go over to Anna's podcast, Entrepreneur Publishing Academy. The link is in the show notes, and check out that episode. Do you remember what that episode's called?
How to get your book in bookstores.
How to get your book in bookstores. We have a similar episode by John Bodie, who's the CEO of ReaderLink. Have you heard of ReaderLink?
No.
He's a distribution company. They do the distribution for everything outside of Barnes & Noble, Costco, Walmart, Target, whatever. And he kind of broke down how all that works, which may be different than how you're doing it. So I'm interested. I'm going to go listen to your episode and hear your strategies for getting into Barnes & Noble, because you know what? The more people know about the books that we publish, it's our job to market our books. And there's no mistake about that. For those of you who are working with an independent publisher, like you said, grow your email list, grow your Instagram following, show up on podcasts, get people excited on LinkedIn about what you're releasing. And then you get to benefit from the more people know about you. So do you have any final tips for authors, aspiring authors, people who are like, how did you do all of this? Where do I start?
Yes. Have your elevator pitch. Be able to fill in the blanks to just go, my book is for blank, so that they can blank. Get really clear. We actually you could just go to bookelevatorpitch.com. You can download that template and see examples. But if you know who your book is for, and I'm talking about a how-to book, I'm obviously not talking about fiction or whatever, who your book is for and what you want the reader to do when they read it, you are going to have such an easier time writing it and such an easier time talking about it. So that's my number one. Do that today.
I love it. And I will include that link in the show notes as well, bookelevatorpitch.com. Being clear about who your book is for, how you're going to help someone, and understanding the business behind your book, I think, are two really great keys that you highlighted today. For more about you and how they can get connected with you, where should they go?
Just go to legacylaunchpad.com/Anna, or if you go to bookelevatorpitch.com, you'll be signed up for our list. You can unsubscribe at any time. I won't even know, but you'll get to know more about me and my company and my podcast that way.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the show today, for connecting all the way from LA to Naples. We both have palm trees, so there's a lot of similarities there too. We don't really experience winter, so that's great. And we're both in sobriety, we're both publishers. So gosh, we're hitting 1,000 here. So thank you again for your time. Be sure to look up Anna David, be sure to follow our podcast, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.
Thank you so much, April.
You're welcome. So this has been another episode of the iBook Podcast. I'm April O'Leary signing off. Be sure to hop on over to o'learypublishing.com to start your author adventure and see what writing a book could do for you in your profession, in your career, and what doors it might open. We thank our guests for being a part of the show today, and be sure to subscribe to podcasts here on YouTube. We look forward to serving you and helping you get your book out into the world.